When my husband said, "I thought we'd just do a payment plan," I realized he'd stolen my son's surgery savings for a luxury watch. At the funeral, I handed him that watch covered in dirt and said, "It ticks better than our son ever will again." He collapsed in tears. My name is Marlene. I'm 43, and for most of my life, I thought I understood what love meant. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, where the air gets sharp in October and memories cling harder than the frost on the window. I thought I had a strong marriage. Thought we were a solid family. But it's strange what a single moment can unravel. I've worked as a pediatric nurse for the last 17 years. It's not glamorous, but I love my job. There's something about helping children, something about the rawness of their hope and pain, that reminds you what's important. Maybe that's why what happened hit so deep. Because I thought Jerome understood that too. My husband. The man I married 12 years ago with tears in his eyes and vows that sounded real. Jerome was all charm and polish. He managed a cluster of luxury car dealerships around the Midwest. He was the kind of man who shook hands with force and always had a cologne scent on his coat. People liked him. He was easy to like. I liked him once too, before time and parenthood and illness wore the edges off everything we had. Wesley came into our lives with wide eyes and a broken heart. Literally. He was born with a congenital heart defect that meant he'd never live the life most kids take for granted. From the start, his life was a cycle of appointments, procedures, and cautious hope. Our fridge was a patchwork of post-it notes and reminders. Echo. Tuesday, cardio consult 3 p.m., Dr. Kwan. Don't forget questions. Still, Wesley had this glow. He loved dinosaurs, could recite species names like poetry, and believed he'd dig bones in Utah someday. He had a laugh that cracked open the coldest rooms. He made people believe, really believe, that maybe, just maybe, he'd make it. We didn't have savings. We had a surgery fund. Every extra cent, every overtime shift, every canceled vacation, it all went into that account. Friends donated. My coworkers at the clinic gave up coffee money. Jerome's brother chipped in. People cared. They cared because Wesley made them care. The surgery was supposed to give him a fighting chance. Not a guarantee. Just a longer timeline. More Christmases. More school plays. More chances to see if he'd actually turn into the paleontologist he dreamed of being. In October, the doctor sat us down. "It's time," Dr. Kwan said gently. "His heart is showing signs of strain. We can't wait any longer." That evening, I came home from work, dropped my purse on the counter, and looked Jerome in the eye for the first time in days. Things had been tense between us, quiet, distant, but I chalked it up to stress. "We're ready," I told him. I checked the account. We hit the target. He looked up from his phone, blinked slowly. "What do you mean?" "The surgery," I said, my voice already starting to stretch thin. "The fund. We have enough. We can schedule it." He was quiet. Too quiet. "I thought," he said, looking at the wall like it held a script, "we'd just do a payment plan." "What?" I laughed. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. "I needed to take care of something," he continued, voice thin. "I meant to put it back. I just borrowed it." That word, borrowed, rattled in my brain like loose change in an empty jar. I stood still. "How much?" His mouth opened, closed. Then finally, 32,000. For a moment, everything inside me hollowed. The walls felt like they were pushing in. "What did you buy, Jerome?" His eyes dropped to the floor. "A watch." I didn't understand. "What kind of watch costs $32,000? "A Rolex. It's limited edition." I thought I could flip it, make more, replace the money before anyone noticed. It was an investment. An investment. That's what he called it. While our son lay every night hooked to machines, while we rationed heating to pay bills, while I reused tea bags to cut costs, he bought himself an investment. I walked out. I went into the garage and screamed until my voice cracked. I punched the wall and broke a blood vessel in my hand. I remember kneeling on the cold cement floor, gasping like a fish out of water, thinking, "We're not going to make it. He's not going to make it." I didn't sleep that night. I called the hospital, the credit union, anyone I could think of. I begged Dr. Kwan for time. But time, in our world, was never on our side. The earliest surgery date they could give us was 6 weeks away. And we didn't get 6 weeks. 2 mornings later, Wesley collapsed while brushing his teeth. One minute he was humming a dinosaur song. The next, he was on the floor. I screamed. I called 911. I started CPR. I'd done it before on other people's children. But this was different. My hands were shaking. My voice broke as I counted chest compressions. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was blue. They tried everything. We followed them to the hospital, but I already knew. I knew by the way the nurse wouldn't meet my eyes. I knew by the silence in the hallway when they brought me into the room. He's gone, they told me. And just like that, so was everything. The funeral was small. Close family. A few friends. Wesley's classmates sent cards with drawings of dinosaurs and stars. I didn't cry. Not then. I was frozen. Jerome cried, though. Sobbed, really. He knelt by the casket like he wanted to crawl in with Wesley. But I couldn't feel sympathy. All I could feel was betrayal. After the service, people offered hugs, murmured prayers, brought casseroles. I didn't eat. I barely spoke. I was waiting for everyone to leave. That night, I walked into our bedroom and opened Jerome's closet. The Rolex was still there, still nestled in its velvet box like it was a crown jewel. I took it, drove back to the cemetery. I didn't tell anyone. It was cold and the grave was still fresh. The soil was loose. I crouched down, pulled open the box, and pressed the face of the watch into the dirt until it smeared. I let the soil cling to the edges, pressed it into the grooves with my thumb. It ticked loud, arrogant. Jerome found me there. I don't know how long he'd been looking. "Marlene," he said behind me. "Please." I stood, turned, and held out the dirt-covered watch. "It ticks better than our son ever will again," I said. He dropped. Just collapsed. Crumpled into a pile of noise and snot and grief. I turned and walked away. We're getting divorced now. I didn't want the house. Didn't want the car. I told my lawyer I just wanted silence. I wanted the quiet that comes when you're done trying to fix things that never should have broken in the first place. He still wears that watch, you know. I heard from a mutual friend. Wears it every day. Says he's trying to honor Wesley. I hope it haunts him. Every tick. Every hour. Because some things can't be forgiven. After the funeral, I found myself existing in a strange, gray in-between. People say time heals, but they never say what time actually does. It doesn't heal, it erodes. It wears you down until the sharp pain becomes dull pressure, and then finally, numbness. I moved in with my sister, Ruth Ann, across town. She offered me the spare room, and I took it without much thought. I left the house and everything in it to Jerome. I didn't even pack much, just a duffel bag with some clothes and the photo albums. I couldn't bear to leave those behind. The days blurred. I went on leave from work. My supervisor at the clinic, Marjorie, had seen too many grieving parents over the years to ask me for a timeline. She just hugged me and said, "Take what you need." I didn't know what I needed. Every morning, I sat on Ruth Ann's porch with a mug of tea I never drank. It would grow cold in my hands as I stared at the trees across the street, listening to nothing. Occasionally a bird would land on the railing, tilt its head at me like it knew something I didn't. People started dropping by less and less, which was fine by me. I wasn't in the mood to be anyone's grief project. They meant well, but I hated how they looked at me. Like I was cracked porcelain. Like if they hugged too tight, I might shatter. The only one who came by regularly was Jerome's brother, Nolan. He wasn't close to Jerome anymore. They drifted after some old business deal fell apart, but he adored Wesley. When he visited, he didn't talk much. Just sat with me, brought groceries sometimes, or left little trinkets he thought Wesley would have liked. A rubber dinosaur eraser. A fossil-shaped keychain. Silly things that made me cry in the bathroom later. One afternoon, Nolan knocked while I was still in my robe. It was a Tuesday, I remember because Ruth Ann was working from home and had just reheated leftover soup. He didn't say anything at first. Just handed me a padded envelope. "What's this?" I asked, my voice raspy from disuse. "I thought you should see it," he said, then glanced toward his car. "It's about Jerome." I opened the envelope after he left. Inside was a sheaf of papers, bank records, receipts, screenshots. I sat down and stared at them for hours. Jerome hadn't just taken the $32,000 for the Rolex. He'd siphoned more, little by little, for months. Hotel charges in Milwaukee. Wire transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Even a transaction labeled Vanguard Jewelry, $8,450. There was more. A handwritten note from Nolan at the bottom of the stack. I didn't want to believe it either. "But you deserve to know." I stared at those words until they blurred. Betrayal, like grief, comes in waves. This was a tidal wave. I texted Jerome. Simple, "We need to talk." Tomorrow. Noon. At the house. I didn't sleep that night. I laid awake in Ruth Ann's spare bed, counting the cracks in the ceiling and wondering what part of our life had been real. I replayed every conversation we'd ever had about money, about Wesley, about the future. And I kept coming back to that watch. That stupid, cursed watch. When I showed up at the house, Jerome was already waiting. He looked smaller somehow. His hair was messier than I remembered. He'd lost weight. Marlene, he said when he opened the door. You look, don't, I cut in. Just don't. We sat at the kitchen table. Wesley's old booster seat still leaned against the wall. I dropped the envelope on the table. He didn't touch it. I know, I said, voice trembling, about the other money. Jerome exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. I tried to keep it all afloat, he started. You thought what? I snapped. That I wouldn't notice? That you could keep gambling with our son's life and not get caught. I didn't gamble, he said. I invested. I was trying to create something for us for the long term. For us. I leaned in. You stole from your son's surgery fund. And you call that an investment? His hands shook. I lost control. I thought I could fix it before anyone knew. But you didn't, I said. You didn't fix anything. You buried your son. Silence stretched. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that. Was there someone else? I asked finally, gesturing to the hotel receipts. His eyes widened. No. God, no. I wouldn't. Then what the hell were you doing? I demanded. He slumped back. I was chasing something. I wanted to feel like I still had worth. Like I was more than just the husband of a sick kid. Everywhere I went, people looked at me like they pitied me. Like I was half a man. That watch, the hotel nights, they were moments I felt like I existed again. I stared at him. At this broken man who once stood tall in a tuxedo and whispered promises at our wedding. I didn't feel hate. Not exactly. Just hollow disappointment. You cost him his chance, I whispered. You cost him his life. He nodded, tears spilling freely now. I know. I stood up, grabbed the envelope, and left without another word. Later that night, I sat on Ruth Ann's couch, staring at an old video of Wesley on my phone. He was in the backyard, talking about triceratops like he was giving a lecture. At the end of the clip, he looked into the camera and said, "Someday, I'll dig up something really, really old. Like treasure." I pressed the phone to my chest and let the tears come. The days that followed were quieter than before. Not the comforting kind of quiet, but the echoing kind, like being alone in a cathedral, surrounded by memories too heavy to touch. Ruth Ann kept checking in, gently, like someone approaching a wounded animal. She never pushed, just made sure there was food on the stove, fresh sheets on the bed, and that I was still breathing. I started walking in the mornings. Not for exercise. Just to move. I'd slip on Wesley's old hoodie, it hung loose on me, and walk the streets near Rathan's place, past the school where he would have started 4th grade, past the library with the dinosaur murals he loved. I couldn't go inside yet. The librarian, Miss Brenda, still asked about him. Sometimes I ended up at the park. Wesley loved the swings. I'd sit on the cold bench nearby and watch other children play. Listen to their laughter. Imagine his voice among them. It wasn't masochism. It was memory maintenance. If I didn't hear echoes of him in the world, I was afraid I'd forget the sound of his joy. One morning, as I was heading back from the park, I saw Jerome's car parked outside Ruth Ann's. My stomach dropped. It had been over 2 weeks since our confrontation. I hadn't blocked his number, but I hadn't responded either. He hadn't tried much after that day. I thought we were done. I walked slowly up the drive. He was sitting on the porch steps, elbows on knees, looking like a ghost of himself. When he saw me, he stood. "I didn't come to argue," he said quickly. "Just to give you something." I hesitated, then sighed and nodded. He pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket and handed it to me. "It's not much, but it's a start." I sold the watch. I blinked. "You did?" He nodded. "Got 28 for it." I know it's not what we lost. Not even close. But I'm liquidating more. I've started a fund. In Wesley's name. For other kids who need surgery but can't afford it. I talked to the hospital about setting it up as a grant. I didn't say anything. "I'm not doing it for redemption," he added. "I know I can't fix what I broke. But I need to try something. Anything." I looked down at the envelope. I didn't open it. "Thank you," I said quietly. He nodded and turned to leave, but before he reached the car, I called out, "You're still going to have to live with it." He didn't turn around. "I already am." He drove away. That night, I sat with Ruth Ann at the kitchen table. I told her about the fund, about the money, about the hospital. She didn't say much, just reached over and took my hand. Later, I went online and looked up the hospital's donation site. It wasn't live yet, but I saw the paperwork Jerome had submitted. The fund had a name, the Wesley Hope Grant. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. I didn't know what I felt. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something shifted in me, just slightly. Like the first time you breathe in spring air after months of winter. In the weeks that followed, I started seeing a grief counselor. Her name was Anita, and she wore long cardigans and had eyes like someone who'd cried for many people. She didn't ask me to talk much at first. She just gave me a space. A quiet space where I didn't have to be brave. One afternoon, after a particularly silent session, she said, "You know, grief is like carrying a stone. It never gets lighter. You just get stronger." I thought about that. About the weight I was dragging behind me every day. About the memories, the guilt, the anger. I started writing little notes to Wesley. At first, they were just scribbles in a notebook. Then they became longer, letters, stories, memories. I wrote about the time he thought clouds were made of whipped cream. About how he used to wear his toy dinosaur claws to bed. About how he once told me that love was like peanut butter. You can spread it on anything and it still sticks. I didn't write to heal. I wrote to remember. One evening, Ruthann found me on the porch with a stack of letters. She sat beside me, flipping through the pages gently. "These are beautiful," she said. "You should do something with them." "Like what?" "Put them together. Make a book. For other parents. For yourself." I laughed softly. "No one wants to read my grief." "You'd be surprised," she said. "There's power in showing people they're not alone." I didn't commit to anything that night. But the idea lingered. The more I wrote, the more I realized I wasn't just grieving Wesley. I was grieving the life we were supposed to have. The future birthdays. The messy teenage years. The college drop-offs. I was grieving the way he would have smiled with his first girlfriend. The man he might have become. I was grieving myself, too. The mother I used to be. The wife. The woman who once believed in forever. One day, I drove back to the house Jerome and I used to share. I didn't call ahead. I just parked on the street and walked up the front path. The lawn was overgrown. The porch light was still busted. But the doorbell worked. He answered, surprised. "I don't want anything," I said. "I just needed to see it." He stepped aside. "Let me in." Everything was the same. The same kitchen table. The same photo of us on the hallway wall. But the energy was different. Still. Cold. We stood in the living room for a while, saying nothing. "I packed up his room," he said. "I didn't throw anything away. It's all in boxes in the attic." I nodded. "Maybe I'll come back for them someday." He didn't push. Before I left, I paused at the threshold. "Do you still hear him?" Jerome looked at me, eyes tired. "Every day." I nodded again, then stepped outside. As I walked to the car, I felt the wind pick up. Leaves scattered across the sidewalk. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. And for the first time in months, I let myself smile. The weeks kept turning, slowly, like heavy pages in a book I didn't want to read, but couldn't put down. Grief didn't get easier. It just got quieter. Like background noise, always there, humming under everything. Fall faded into winter. In Madison, that means gray skies and ice that creeps over every surface like a second skin. I still walked, bundled up in Wesley's hoodie under a thick coat, hands shoved in pockets, headphones in but no music playing. Just pretending. Pretending helped. A little. The grief group Anita recommended met every Thursday evening in the community center basement. I didn't want to go at first. I didn't want to sit in a circle of strangers and tell them about the hole in my chest. But one night, I did. I just showed up. There were 7 of us. A mother who lost her daughter to leukemia. A man whose wife died in a car accident. A quiet woman with a silver streak in her braid who never said who she lost, just talked about empty chairs. We didn't hold hands. We didn't cry on cue. Mostly, we sat and listened. I didn't talk the first few weeks. I just watched. Observed. Then one night, I brought a letter I'd written to Wesley and read it out loud. My voice shook. My hands did too. But when I finished, nobody said anything stupid. No one tried to fix it. They just nodded. And I felt, for the first time in a long time, like I'd spoken into a space that could hold what I'd said. I kept going. Back at Ruthann's, I started organizing the letters and stories I'd written into some kind of order. I had no idea what I was doing. There was no plot, no arc. Just memories. But I printed them out, stacked them, and wrote, for Wesley, on the cover with a blue pen he used to use for his drawings. One day, I took the pages to the library. Miss Brenda, who still wore the same owl earrings she'd worn for years, recognized me immediately. "Oh honey," she said, reaching across the counter, "I've been thinking about you." We sat at the back table in the children's section, where Wesley used to sprawl out with picture books. I showed her the stack. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted. "But it feels like I need to do something." She flipped through the first few pages. "These aren't just letters," she said. "They're a bridge." "To what?" "To whoever needs them." She connected me with a small local press that worked with memoirists and first-time writers. I didn't expect anything from it. I just submitted the manuscript and figured that would be the end. It wasn't. A few weeks later, I got an email. They wanted to publish it. Small run. Local distribution. They loved the rawness, the simplicity, the way it didn't try to be profound, it just was. I stared at the screen for a long time before telling anyone. Then I called Rithan. Then Anita. Then Nolan. Nolan offered to help with printing costs. It's for Wesley, he said. Let me. When the first copies arrived, I held one in my hands like it was glass. The cover had a sketch of a dinosaur Wesley had drawn once, the one he swore was the smelliest triceratops ever. Inside, my letters. My grief. My love. My guilt. All laid bare. The launch was quiet. Just a table at the local bookstore, a few chairs, a thermos of coffee. People came. Parents. Grandparents. Nurses. Teachers. Strangers. They asked questions. Some cried. One woman handed me a folded napkin and said, "Your words made me feel less crazy." I started getting emails, letters, messages from people I didn't know telling me their stories, thanking me for sharing mine, telling me they read the book in one sitting, that it helped them talk to their kids, that it helped them forgive someone, that it helped them breathe again. I never expected that, never wanted attention. But somehow, Wesley's story was doing what he used to do so naturally, making people feel something. Making them believe in little things again. I kept going to the grief group, kept writing, kept walking. I started volunteering at the children's hospital on Saturdays, reading to the kids who were stuck there, drawing dinosaurs, letting them tell me about their dreams. One day, a little boy named Jacob asked, "Do you have any kids?" I paused, then nodded. I had a boy. His name was Wesley. Was he funny? Jacob asked. He was, I said. He really was. Do you miss him? Every day. Jacob nodded solemnly, then handed me a crayon drawing of A.T. Rex with heart-shaped spots. This is for him, he said. I took it home and pinned it to the wall above my bed. Jerome kept his distance. We emailed occasionally about the Wesley Hope Grant. It was growing, donations were coming in from unexpected places. A local business matched funds. A family we didn't know hosted a bake sale. The hospital sent updates. Kids were getting the surgeries they needed. I didn't know what that meant for us, for Jerome and me. I wasn't thinking about that yet. The damage between us was deep, like cracked foundation. But I also saw what he was doing now. He was trying to build something from the wreckage. And maybe that was something. One morning, I went back to the cemetery. It had snowed the night before, and the ground was smooth and quiet. I stood by Wesley's grave with a thermos of hot chocolate and talked to him. Told him about the book. About Jacob. About the grant. I miss you, I whispered. But I'm trying. I'm really trying. The wind stirred the branches. A bird landed on the headstone, pecked at the snow, then flew off. I stood there a long time, until my fingers went numb. Then I turned and walked away. Spring arrived the way it always did in Wisconsin, slowly, reluctantly, and then all at once. The frost retreated, the robins returned, and tiny crocuses pushed up through the dirt like they had something to prove. The days stretched longer, and so did my patience, for myself, for the world, even for Jerome. The Wesley Hope Grant had grown beyond anything I expected. Local news did a story, then regional, then national. Donations poured in. A foundation offered to partner. It was no longer just a memorial fund, it was changing lives. Saving kids like Wesley. Jerome and I were listed as co-founders, but I kept my distance. We coordinated through emails and a shared drive. He never asked for more, and I never offered it. One afternoon, I received an invitation in the mail, heavy cardstock with gold lettering. It was for a charity gala in Madison, hosted by the hospital to celebrate the expansion of the Wesley Hope Grant. My name was listed as a featured speaker. Jerome's too. I almost didn't go. I wasn't ready to share a stage with him, to be in the same room and pretend we were anything other than two people tied together by grief and betrayal. But something in me, a quiet, steady thing, said go. The night of the gala, I wore a navy dress with Wesley's favorite color, lime green, stitched into the hem. Ruthin came with me. So did Nolan. Anita sent flowers. The ballroom was buzzing when we arrived. Tables draped in white cloths, flickering candles, soft music. The kind of place that would have made Wesley run wild with excitement. I sat at a reserved table near the stage. Jerome was already there, talking to a board member. When he saw me, he stood, then hesitated. "Hi, Marlene," he said, cautious. "Jerome," I replied, equally measured. "You look," he stopped. Thank you for coming. I nodded, and we didn't say much more. We didn't need to. The program began with a short video about the grant. It showed photos of the children helped so far before and after surgery. Laughter, tears, parents hugging doctors. Then a clip of me reading to kids at the hospital. My voice played over footage of little hands flipping book pages. Then they called me up. I stood at the podium, heart pounding. The room blurred slightly under the lights. I took a deep breath and began. I used to think I knew what strength looked like, I said. I thought it was being able to hold everything together, no matter what. But my son, Wesley, taught me otherwise. He showed me that real strength is found in small things. In being kind when you're scared. In asking for help when you need it. In choosing hope when everything feels lost. The crowd was silent. This grant, I continued, was born from pain. But it's growing into something bigger. Something better. It's giving families what we couldn't give our son a chance. When I stepped down, people stood, applauded, hugged me. But I barely heard them. My eyes were fixed on Jerome. He was next. He spoke well. He always did. Talked about Wesley, about the impact of the grant, about legacy. He didn't mention the past. He didn't try to rewrite history. After the speeches, donors mingled. Photographers clicked. I found a quiet corner with a glass of water. Then a woman approached me. Polished, maybe mid-50s. Expensive dress. Sharp eyes. I'm Meredith Lang from the Midwestern Philanthropy Alliance, she said. Your story was moving. Your work, extraordinary. Thank you, I said carefully. I wanted to let you know we're considering the Wesley Hope Grant for a regional humanitarian award. But I'd also like to talk about something else. Have you ever considered running a foundation on your own? I blinked. I'm not sure I follow. We're looking to sponsor someone with lived experience, someone who understands the emotional weight of this work. You clearly have a gift. Empathy, vision, voice. We'd like to help you build something new. My breath caught. Something new. She smiled. Yes, something entirely your own. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about her words. I thought about Wesley. About the notebook full of letters. About the parents who'd written me. About the little boy who drew dinosaurs with hearts. The next morning, I emailed Jerome. Jerome, thank you for last night. You spoke well. And you've worked hard. I see that. But I need to take a step forward. Alone. I'm starting a new foundation, something separate. Focused not just on surgeries, but on the emotional support families need. Counseling. Grief groups. Education. I've been offered backing. I'm keeping my name on the grant, but I won't be involved in day-to-day. I trust you can carry it forward. This is yours to finish. I need something that's mine. For Wesley. For me. Take care, Marlene, he replied that same day. Marlene, thank you. For everything. I don't deserve your grace, but I'm grateful for it. And for what we built, even if it came from something broken. I'll honor it. Always. I wish you strength and peace. You deserve both. Jerome, a few months later, I launched the new foundation, the Pebble Project. Named after the tiny stones Wesley used to collect on our walks. He'd always say, one pebble can make a big splash. We opened with a handful of counselors, a library of grief resources, a small fund for travel costs and family housing near hospitals. It was small, but it was mine, and it was real. A year after the gala, I stood in a community center in Eau Claire, speaking to a group of newly bereaved parents. I handed out paper and pens and said, write to them. Even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts. I looked around the room and saw tears. But also relief. Wesley's drawing of the smiling triceratops hung on the wall behind me. And in that moment, I knew. The revenge wasn't in ruin or punishment. It was in building something that Jerome could never control. Something pure. Something healing. Something alive. Something Wesley would have been proud of.